Please, one piece of bread.
It was on an exceptionally cold New Year's Eve night. The doorbell rang, and when I opened the door, there stood my 5-year-old granddaughter trembling. In a sudden turn of events, I hurriedly brought her inside and quickly prepared a warm meal. My granddaughter eagerly devoured the bread. After filling her stomach, she hesitantly began to share her circumstances. It turned out to be a shocking truth about my son's family and granddaughter that I had been unaware of. I am Shannon Watts. 3 years ago, my husband passed away, and at the age of 65, I quit my part-time job to live alone on my pension. Although my husband left me some assets, I enjoyed a modest life on my own terms. However, there was one thing that concerned me. It was about my son Nolan and his child, who had left home after getting married. Nolan and his wife Riley were living off the rental income from the apartment left by my late husband. Upon inheriting the assets, the two quit their jobs. Especially Nolan, who had always disliked working, started living a carefree life with the rental income, not worrying about money. Since then, their attitude towards my adorable first grandchild, Heather, also bothered me. Before Heather was born, my son and his wife strongly desired a boy.
I'd prefer a boy if we're going to raise one.
I feel the same. I'm sure our wish will come true. Having such conversations, they didn't ask about the baby's gender before childbirth. However, when they found out it was a girl, they were clearly disappointed. After Heather's birth, every time I visited my son's house, I felt something was amiss.
Grandma, let's play.
Sure. What would you like to do?
Drawing.
Saying that, Heather laughed happily, and her clothes, full of loose threads, were obviously secondhand to anyone. The oversized, baggy pants looked like they belonged to a bygone era and were ready to slip off any time. Hey, Nolan, Riley, wouldn't it be better if Heather had slightly smaller clothes?
It's fine. She'll grow into them soon.
Yeah. Besides, she'll outgrow them anyway, so it's a waste. Even when scolded, they showed no concern whatsoever.
More importantly, Riley, I want that wristwatch.
Again? Well, fine. I plan to buy a branded bag for myself too. Ignoring their daughter, they chatted about such things with laughter.
Hey, Grandma, let's draw.
Oh, sorry. I could only play with my earnest granddaughter. Around the time Heather turned 3, the true nature of that discomfort became evident when her younger brother Nick was born. My son and his wife went out, leaving me in charge of babysitting Heather and Nick. When they returned, they ignored Heather, who welcomed them with welcome home, and handed a plethora of toys to Nick. Nick. Look, souvenirs.
I bought all of these for you, Nick.
It was blatant discrimination to an onlooker, but Heather didn't seem to mind not having any toys. She ran to her brother, offering a cheerful good for you. However, at that moment, Nolan furrowed his brows, forcibly separated the two, and, without giving me a chance to object, spoke while pushing Heather towards me.
Mom, we're going out as a family next time, so buy new clothes for Nick.
Then, I'll buy some for Heather too.
No, for Heather. New clothes would be a waste, and if you give us cash, that's enough.
Without waiting for my response, Nolan returned to Nick and Riley. After all, boys are adorable. Doesn't Nick resemble my brother in the eyes and all?
Oh yeah, he looks a lot like him. I'm looking forward to him growing up.
The conversation of my son's couple was audible to both Heather and me, and I was fed up. Riley loved her brother, and from the beginning of their marriage, she had expressed a preference for a boy. Nolan, too, had a longing for male siblings since childhood, and the favoritism towards Nick was blatantly growing, leaving a widening gap in the treatment of Heather. I can't let this continue. Unable to endure my son's family any longer, I unintentionally spoke out. While I understand that Nick is cute, your children are not just one. What's the matter? Don't raise your voice so suddenly. Nick will be surprised. Even so, I can't let Heather hear such conversations. Huh? Can you please not meddle in other people's families? We're raising Heather just fine. That's rude.
Riley's right. It's none of your business, right?
Nolan's yelling made it clear that Heather was on the verge of tears. There were still many things I wanted to say to them, but seeing Heather frightened by her displeased parents, I realized something. If I argue back here, Heather's treatment will worsen. In that case, I decided to make sure Heather could find solace at least when I visited. However, contrary to my feelings, the chances of meeting my son's family gradually decreased. I wonder if Heather and Nick are doing well. I felt lonely not being able to see my growing grandchildren day by day. And time passed until, before I knew it, it was New Year's Eve. That winter was particularly cold, and while preparing dinner early and watching TV with concern about whether my grandchildren caught a cold, the doorbell rang around 8 p.m., and I tilted my head in wonder. Since there were no plans for visitors that night, I opened the front door with curiosity, and there stood Heather with a face that seemed about to cry, trembling. What happened at this hour?
Please, one piece of bread.
Emaciated, with a pale complexion, Heather begged for bread in a small voice, and I was speechless. Even looking around, there was no sign of my son's family. Did she come to my house alone? Surprised, I supported her chilled body and invited her into the house. In the living room, Heather was seated, and I quickly prepared a warm meal. As Heather enthusiastically devoured the bread in front of her, tears welled up in her eyes. When Heather, now full, calmed down, I gently inquired, "Heather, where are Mom and Dad?"
They've been on a trip with Nick since 3 days ago.
What? You haven't eaten anything during that time?
I had some snacks, but they ran out quickly, and I haven't had anything to eat for the past 2 days.
Heather's feeble response ignited intense anger towards my son and his wife. Do you know why they didn't take you with them?
Dad and Mom said it's because I'm a girl.
Leaving you behind for such a reason. I clenched my fist, feeling that this was going too far.
I was hungry and couldn't bear it. I'm sorry.
There's no need for you to apologize, Heather. Seeing my granddaughter apologetic and with a trembling voice, I felt a tightening sensation in my chest. Moreover, this wasn't the first time such a thing had happened. They told me not to tell anyone about it, Heather also revealed.
But I couldn't take the loneliness anymore.
Heather must have endured it for a very long time.
I don't want to anymore. I want to be with Grandma.
Trying to figure out how Heather could be happy, I embraced her small body, along with the SOS signal she sent. 3 days later, my son and his wife, returning from their trip, came to offer New Year's greetings with Nick.
Mom, give me some money.
Right after entering the house, my son made such a request. Nick, come on, greet her. Prompted by Riley, Nick, bowing slightly, received the prepared present. Then, holding another gift bag, I intentionally looked around as if searching. Oh. Isn't Heather with you? With a single sentence, the atmosphere froze, and next to Riley, whose complexion turned pale, Nolan twisted his expression.
She's sick at home today.
Is that so? I effortlessly stepped aside, and, visibly relieved, the two of them beside Riley displayed tension. How can they lie so easily? Since New Year's Eve, Heather has been at my house, so I had her hide before my son's family arrived. To corner my son and his wife, who were unaware of this, I needed more evidence. I began my move to punish while living with Heather. First, because I couldn't give Heather the present, I went to my son's house again on a different day.
Mom. What's wrong, all of a sudden?
I came to give Heather a present.
Heather is out playing right now.
Then I'll meet Nick and leave. Is it okay if I come in? Ignoring the uneasy son and his wife, I entered the house, gave Nick the snacks I had brought, and left after a while. And then, 2 days later, I called my son, saying, I have something to discuss about real estate. Hearing that, Nolan and Riley came to my house with Nick without any doubt.
Mom, is it about giving us property as a gift during your lifetime?
That would be a big help. Thank you. Even before I said anything, the two of them were getting excited on their own. Wait a moment. What are you two talking about?
You mentioned a discussion about real estate.
Yes, there is a discussion about real estate. But before that, there's something I want to ask. Whether they wanted to talk about the gift of property in a hurry or they looked impatient, I confronted the two of them head-on. Where is Heather exactly? It's been 2 weeks since I took care of Heather, but during that time, the two of them didn't show any signs of searching for her whereabouts.
About that.
She's not feeling well today. You don't need to lie anymore. Despite their stumbling, the two tried to deceive me, so I showed them a certain video. In that video, my son and his wife were celebrating Heather's disappearance. It's good that Heather is gone, said Nolan, and Riley, excitedly, now we can use all the money for Nick. In addition, they eagerly awaited the inheritance that would come from me. Even if you notice Heather's absence, there's nothing you can do, they belittled me and laughed together.
Why do you have something like this?
Actually, when I went to my son's house to give a present, I secretly installed a hidden camera to avoid being noticed by the two. 3 days later, using the excuse of forgetting something, I went to my son's house again and retrieved the camera. I wanted some kind of evidence, and I was surprised myself that such a conversation was recorded, but it angered me to see the two treating Heather as if she no longer existed. I stopped the camera footage and slowly began to speak. What is this behavior towards your child who suddenly disappeared? Are you even parents? Heather left on her own and didn't come back. It's not our fault. Yes. We thought that way. It's only natural not to take her on trips every time. As I muttered, Nolan's eyes widened like saucers.
What? How do you know about that?
I heard it from Heather herself.
Could it be? She's with you, Mom.
Yes. She came to me seeking help and came here alone. I have no intention of returning Heather to you. I will take her in and raise her. Upon hearing my declaration, the two of them sparkled with joy and seemed to dance with happiness. That's right. That's good. We won't have any trouble even if Heather is not with us.
Yeah. Anyway, we didn't need her.
I could only be amazed at how rotten he had become inside, but I smiled and pushed the stack of documents on the table towards my son. Prompted by me, Nolan reluctantly spread out the documents, but the moment he understood their contents, all color drained from his face. It was a move-out notice written by the residents of the apartment from which my son and his wife were earning rental income. Actually, that apartment originally belonged to my husband and me, so most of the residents, having lived there for a long time, were acquaintances of mine. When I visited each one of them, they told me about the dissatisfaction since my son's couple took over the management. I already introduced the properties I own to everyone.
Huh. What the hell are you doing on your own?
You decided to raise the rent, right? Many people were dissatisfied with that, and if there's a better place to move to, they said they wanted to go there.
What? We just remodeled this year to increase rental income. We even took a loan for that.
As my son held his head, Riley, who was beside him, suddenly started to express intense anger. Hey, you. What's going on? Your father said all the assets he had were yours. And, what's this about a loan? Probably, because Nolan has always been boastful, he must have lied that he inherited all the assets from his father. It makes sense that he kept the debt a secret too.
Anyway, Mom's assets will eventually be mine, so it's the same thing.
I have no intention of handing over my inheritance to you.
Wait a minute. Without the rental income from the apartment, we can't live.
That's because you quit your job. Our connection ends here. Live with Riley from now on. With my declaration of estrangement, I took back the stack of the notices while sending a cold gaze to my son who was crying for help. I'm already consulting with a lawyer about Heather's situation. I don't mind going to court.
Fine. I'll give Heather to you, Mom, so give me money in return.
That's right. Just provide an amount that won't make us struggle for a while, and we'll give you that child. What nonsense are you talking about? And, you two are not in a position to pay. Be prepared, as I will claim compensation for what you've done to Heather. With a firm statement, I kicked my son and his wife out of the house. Returning to the room, my hidden granddaughter peeked her face. It's okay now, let's continue living together. Heather.
Grandma. Thank you.
I hugged Heather, who came to me happily, with strong arms. Afterwards, my son and his wife spent their days dealing with the $20,000 compensation I demanded and repaying the debt from the apartment's renovation. With the sudden decrease in residents, the two, almost without any rental income, struggled to make ends meet, each doing harsh day labor to earn a living. On the other hand, I'm enjoying a new life with my granddaughter. I had secured an agreement with Nolan and Riley to regularly let Heather and Nick meet, so they play together happily 3 times a month. The once reserved Heather is now a lively and cheerful girl. My greatest joy is to watch her as she walks through life. How was this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.